seated. Now is a good time. That's when the middle school will take off to their area. Children have their own worship going on. It's good to see you all here today. Everybody doing all right? How many of you are cold? We're cold. Wish you're by the fire. Does anybody know what this is? It's a book of maps. This is not printed out Google Maps. These are actually printed for a reason. So, who uses maps anymore, right? Let's take a little informal survey. Anybody ever been lost? Anybody been lost? Okay. You're just started driving, but not yet. Okay. So, it was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, if you weren't here, we actually had Benton County Emergency Services call me and said wanted to use our facilities for a headquarter during a Sunday morning worship service because there was a hiker that was lost up in one of the trails or whatever, and luckily they found him. That was one of the really cold mornings right after that little bitty snow that we had. And so they found him. He was unresponsive, but they found him, and that's all I know is that but he got lost, right? I talked to a good friend of mine. You may know, may not. I had met him a long time ago in FFA. He was an FFA instructor, Bob Meisenheimer. I ran into him at O'Reilly's the other day, and I walked by him. I saw his jacket, and I hadn't seen him in forever. And so I backed up, and I said, "Mr. Meisenheimer," and he got to looking at me, and he's like, "I know you, and we talked through a few things that remembered. It's like, the other day I was driving home, and I pulled into this driveway, and I sat there, and I went, this is not my house. And I don't know how to get home." That must be an eerie feeling. It was just, he was explaining it, in his sugar level. He's diabetic. His sugar level got out of whack. And the people that were at that home looked out the window and was wondering why this guy is sitting in the car, and finally they came out and they actually drove him home. In my family, there's two of us that know where we are most every time. I've had a few calls from other family members of mine, I'm not going to say who, and they would ask, "Where am I?" And I'm going, "You're going to have to tell me something around you, And so I do remember Aaron when he was first driving. We were at the location out here on Mount Olive, and he's pulling out, and we get to 412, okay? And we're going home, but he turns right. I let him go a ways, and I'm like, "Where are we going?" "Oh, is this not the way home?" And it's like, okay, all right. We have been lost, okay? And what's interesting, because I grew up in the area, I know the area really well, and so it was easy for my wife to call me and go, "How do I get to," and I would explain. The other day, she was coming home from school, and the traffic at Lowell just got backed up. There was an accident or something, and she's going, "Do you know a way around this?" And I'm going, "Oh, yeah, here's what you need to do. Run over Wagon Wheel, cut there by Cat, and you come out and you get on 412, and, So I'm talking to her on the phone the whole time, just kind of guiding her through of where to go. So I'm the Tom Mike in her life. So that's how you know if you're dating right now, that's how you know if you found your soulmate, because if they're a lost and you're a found, I don't think God would put two lost people together. That would just be torture, wouldn't it? But the whole idea is that there is people in your family that they're known. They know where they are, and they know when they're. And they got those that just. I'll put it like this: sometimes we look at people who are lost and we go, "You're just not paying attention." And they don't do it on purpose. They don't get lost on purpose, do they? It's typically. Well, let me ask you this: I've been lost before, and there was not a line where I got to in driving, I went, "Okay, now I don't know where I'm at. Let me back up. Okay, now I know where I am," right? And then I go a little bit forward. No, this is not. Men, when we drive with confidence, right? And we'll be lost for a while, okay? Because we won't stop and ask. I mean, even in areas where I grew up, took some guys, we thought they wanted to go hike and camp, so I took them to the cave. But we didn't take the short route, just pull up to the bottom of the mountain and hike up. We parked over at Weddington Gap, and we walked in through the woods and all that, And that ice storm that hit, and it had blocked a lot of the roads. Trash was just everywhere. And the old logging road that was there got really blocked off, and we couldn't take it. So I'm like, I know this area. So we're walking. It gets dark, and we're still walking, and we're walking, and we're walking. My brother-in-law, Steve, he pulls up on his phone. He goes, Mike, we're heading back to the cars. And because he dropped a pin when we started, so he'd at least find his way back. And he was right. I mean, it was like we were doing a big circle, And I'm like, see, people don't get lost on purpose. And it's not like you get to a point and you go, oh, I'm lost. Now I'm found. No, I'm lost. Now I'm found. It's like we get lost for a while. And it's not that we don't pay attention. It's that when we get lost, okay, it's the idea that you really get lost. It's like you've been on this path for a while and you thought this path was going to take you somewhere, and it's not the path that took you where you needed to go. I'll give you one more example. We were going to Oregon, Lee. We were heading to where your mom lives, and we were going to Bandon, and we thought it'd be really cool to stop and see like the Grand Canyon or the Painted Desert or something like that. We were little, and we got separated. Your parents and my parents, we were traveling together, and at some point we got separated. My Uncle Carl was with us, and they'd been driving all night and almost ran out of gas and had to park at this station. And they didn't know where they were. And they had to figure it out. And when the station finally opened and they finally figured out where they were going and all that. And so whatever road you're on determines where you end up. You can think you're heading in the right direction, but whatever road you're on, that determines where you're going to end up. If you pack your stuff, you get your floaties out and you get your little body boards and you get your snorkels and you're going to head to the Gulf. If you go down 412 and you get on I-49 and you turn and you go north, are you going to end up at the Gulf? No. You're going to end up somewhere where they make maple syrup, eh? And so the whole idea is when you're traveling, whatever road you're on, you will end up at a destination because of the road that you're on. There are some roads that they've told us, like in Alaska during the winter, that be careful what rut you get in because you may be in that same rut for 20 miles. Won't be able to get out of it. We was growing up, and I was driving and I had this old pickup we called Rodney, because it was named after Rodney Dangerfield because it had no respect. And so we were at Orrin Keck's house for a fellowship, just hanging out with them, and my brother and I jumped in the truck. We were heading home. Mom and Dad went 412, and we went the back way down by Gum Springs and dirt roads back through there. And it had been freeze and thaw, and we started hitting the spot that was kind of muddy in the truck. And, mud and a guy, that's like, just give her more gas and away we go. And so we're going, and all of a sudden the truck starts getting into the rut gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And so I'm like, ooh, I got to grab gears, and I'm grabbing gears and trying to get it. I got it up out of the rut and grab first gear to keep it going, keep the momentum going, and all of a sudden it just got sucked back in and it stopped. And I tried to open the doors, and they were at the mud, okay? And it was like, I had to get like 6 log chains, a 2-ton truck to get that thing out, to reach it. Because the rut that we got in got us stuck. Because we thought, hey, this will be a shortcut. This will be easier to get to, okay? And we'll beat Mom and Dad. It ended up taking us a lot longer because it wasn't what we thought it was going to be because of the things around us. So what I want you to understand is, the bottom line to this whole series is direction, not intention, determines your destination. Direction, not intention, determines your destination. It's just like I said, if you pack up your stuff and you plan to go on the trip to the Gulf and you've got you've called, you've got reservations, you've got all this stuff lined up, you've prayed about it, you've planned for it, you believe that, when you get there, you're going to have all this much fun, and then you get in your car and you pray for traveling mercies, as we do, and you get to I-49 and you turn left and you go north, you're not going to end up at the Gulf, are you? It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter how much faith that you put into it. But if you get on a road that's heading in a non-direction that you want to end up, that you hope that you will end up, that you believe that you end up, then guess what? You won't end up there. Because the road that you're on will take you to a logical destination. And we know this in the world of driving. But what's interesting to me is I talk to people, and people call me all the time, and they've got all this stuff that's going on in their lives, and all of a sudden, it's like they believed that what they were doing and where they were going was going to end them up where they needed to be. This principle actually affects every one of us. In the whole idea that this principle of the path applies to your financial path, right? Because we all have goals in what we want in finances, what we want to do with our money and where we want to go with it and things like that. It affects marriage. If you're in marriage, then the whole idea that the path that you're on in marriage is either going forward or backward. You're on a path. It affects your path in business or your profession, because you have hopes and dreams of what you want to be, but if you're not on that direction, you're not going to end up there. And so the principle of the path that our direction, not our intention, determines our destination. That your direction, not your intention, not your hopes, is going to end up there. Not your dreams are going to end up there. Not even how hard you pray will cause you to end up at a destination if you're not on the right direction. The whole idea is that you may believe that you're going to be this one of these days, but if you're not on that road, if you're not heading that direction, it doesn't matter what you believe, what you dream, what you pray, what you believe. Will you end up there? You know this because you have talked to people. And they begin to tell you a story of a time that their world blew up. When things fell apart. And as they begin to tell you the story, you already know what the logical conclusion is going to be, and you're thinking in your mind, didn't you realize that where you were going was going to get you there? I've never had a family come to me and go, Mike, things have been really stressful, jobs have been crazy, we're pulling out our hair, and we've decided that if we will just take a fifth of whiskey and give everybody shots before they go to bed, things will be great, right? I figured if, medication's really high, but I hear you can buy this stuff off, that's not in the pharmacy, it'll calm me, it'll help me eat more. And the whole idea is, if we do that, that's going to help my family. I have never had a family do that. They did not take health in school, right? And what's interesting, and despite your education, does not mean that you'll end up where you think you're going to end up. Now, don't get me wrong, because every one of us may be in the right direction, and our world blows up, and we kind of go, wait a minute, I thought, God, this is where you wanted me to go. Just because your world blows up doesn't mean that God doesn't have you on the right path. Don't take that the wrong direction, in the sense that sometimes we believe, we think, if I'm doing what God wants me to do, then everything's going to be great and peachy and rosy, and I'll have all the money I need and all this stuff. And that's not true. But what I do know that's true in all of this, whatever direction we're heading, we're going to end up at a destination. Now, as we get into this, I want you to understand that we understand that in driving, but we have a disconnect when it comes to families. We have a disconnect when it comes to business, finances, all of this stuff, because we kind of think, well, if I do this, then things are going to help me out. Your direction ultimately determines your destination. In other words, the reason I'm bringing this up is because of the disconnect, because people want to end up in one place, but they want to take a different path to get there. And when they get on that path, it doesn't take them where they think they need to be going. Because we have these hopes and dreams and beliefs. And we think that these will ultimately get us where we need it to be going. But what's interesting, direction trumps your hope. Direction trumps your belief. Direction trumps your intention. Let me share a story that illustrates this, because direction trumps this. In Proverbs chapter 7, okay, we're going to see a story that actually describes all of this. And in Proverbs chapter 7, we find the story that is given by one of the wisest men that has ever lived. His name's Solomon. Let me give you a little bit of backstory, history, so you understand where we're coming from. David was the second king of Israel, but he was the first king appointed by God. And David was a mighty man of valor. And he was one of the greatest kings that Israel ever had. So much so that his lineage carried on for 18 generations. Actually, his lineage carries on to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ. And so the whole idea is that Solomon was born to David through a woman named Bathsheba, which I think is interesting because her name is Bath and Sheba, and David saw her taking a bath, and that's why he ended up having her brought to him, and he had an affair, and he had her husband murdered and all this stuff, and so, the relationship started off really rocky. The first child that was born to him when she found out she was pregnant died. Solomon is the next child born. And Solomon is the one that's actually chosen as king. And in his story, God comes to him and says, Solomon, ask me anything you want, I'll give it to you. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, if God came to you and said, hey, you just ask me anything you want, what would that be? What would you ask God for? Yeah. I mean, stop and think about that for a second. What would we really ask God for? And here's a guy that's going to be king. He doesn't choose wealth. He doesn't choose power. Doesn't even choose control. He gives that up and he says, God, whatever you deem necessary for me to have, that's what I want, because I want to lead your people like you do. And God gives him wisdom. And as a result of that, he actually, because he's wise and how he handles his finances and things like that, I mean, it's great. As you read through the Psalms, as you read through the story of David, you hear David talking to his sons. And in Proverbs, which is it's almost like it's the diary of Solomon. Ecclesiastes is actually more of that, but just the idea that Solomon is writing these things down. And at the beginning of Proverbs chapter 7, verse 1, he says this, my son, keep my words and treasure up my commands with you. He's talking to his sons. And he says, let me tell you a story. In Proverbs chapter 7, verse 6, look at this. For at the window of my house, he's at the palace. He's up on the second floor, the portico, whatever, and of my house, and I have looked out through my lattice. So he's up there, he's just kind of looking over the city. He's just kind of watching. And look what he sees. Verse 7. And I have seen among the simple And I have perceived among the youths a young man lacking sense. Now, let me maybe explain this a little bit better. It's not like Solomon's up there going, oh man, look at me, I've got everything together, I'm the wisest man that's ever lived, and everybody else is just stupid. No, that's not what he's saying. Simple. A better translation would be the simple life people are living. I mean, Solomon has to make so many decisions. He has people coming to him and asking for his wisdom in this account and this account. I mean, even one of the stories where two women were fighting over a baby. And Solomon said, because one lady saying, no, this is my baby, and the other lady saying, no, this is my baby. And we think this is what makes the evening news, right? Because somebody stole a baby. And so here they are, they're arguing on it, and Solomon brings his sword out and says, all right, let me just split the baby in two, and you each take a half. Because he wanted to find out who the real mother was, and the real mother said, no, let her have the baby. She loved the baby so much that she didn't want it to die. She gave it she gave it up to the woman who wasn't the mother, and then Solomon knew what he was doing, took the baby and handed it back to the real mother. I mean, the Queen of Sheba even came and wanted to get some counsel from Solomon. He had all kinds of decisions that he needed to make. And so his life was just full of stuff. And he's looking out not at the simple-minded, but at the simple lifestyle that people are living. And he perceived among them a young man. Now I want you to understand, young men in this day were from the age of 12 to like 18, 19. Okay? 12 because they are able to buy land, they're able to get a job, they're able to get married and support their family. We look at that and go, really? I mean, we have our 12-year-olds in a room in there because they're snotty little kids, we don't want them. But just the whole idea. I mean, it's like guys never grow up past 7th grade, so it's kind of like, really, Think about this for a minute. Solomon is talking to his boys. And he sees this plan, and he says, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you what I saw. There's a young man who, he's lacking sense. Not that he's stupid. He's lacking experience. Maybe that's a better term, a better word for this application. He's lacking experience because all youth are lacking experience. When I started teaching my kids how to drive, they were really pretty young. And I would let them, steer the car. I'd let them put it in gear. I mean, even my granddaughter drove the truck the other day because we stopped to help Keith and his son-in-law, and she was in the truck. It was running. It was cold, and we were trying to get a serpentine belt back on, and I all of a sudden I had the window down, and I was talking to Delilah, and all of a sudden, the truck started rolling. I was like, whoa, and I opened the door, jumped in, stopped the truck, and she was like, my pinky must have put it in gear. I was like, later I found out she goes, I just want to go, I'm like, okay. So, dang it, didn't have that brake actuated, put it in drive thing. So anyway, the whole idea is that I let the kids drive when they were younger, so they would gain some experience before I let them behind the wheel of a 16-year-old, behind the wheel of a 3,000-pound vehicle going down the road, Ryan, I'm going to tell this story on you. When he passed his written test, I just threw him the keys. I said, all right, you get to drive home. And again, he's been driving. You go down 3-mile stretch, and before they 4-laned it, it used to have that really sharp corner there at Arcotech Road where Tufco is. For some of you from Gentry, you know that area. And there was 2 roads to get off of that. There was one that kind of went straight, and then there was one in the middle of the curve that you'd go off this, and it kind of wide down there at the bottom. And then the road went on around, and then it took another right, and then it went on down. And Ryan is driving, and we're coming up there, and I don't have a brake on my side, but I'm reaching for the brake, thinking that he's going to turn, And I just thought, oh, there's a semi coming around the corner. He must going to be driving into Gentry to show his friends, he's driving, And all of a sudden, he just bails off that corner, and a semi-truck is in this. I'm looking at lights. That's all I see is just the grill of this big Peterbilt, and I'm like, punch it, punch it, punch it, and he's going, what? He had time. As I saw the bumper of that truck just barely miss our pickup. I mean, it was so fast that the truck driver had no opportunity to even touch his brake, And because he lacked experience. He didn't understand what it meant to judge time, And I'm like, after that, we're having a conversation of how that trucker needs a little more time, and you need to give him time and all this stuff. Yeah, he shot the gap, I don't know where he learns that stuff from. I'm just saying. All youth lack experience. It's not that they're stupid. It's just that they don't understand. You can get an education, but until you apply the education, you don't know the experience. And that's what Solomon is saying. Here is a young man, and he doesn't have experience. Okay? Now, let me tell you this. For those of us that have a lot of experience, gray hair showing, just because you have experience doesn't mean that you're going to make wise decisions, right? As one professor said, and I think this is great, he said this, evaluated experience will help you to make better decisions. Because we all know that people make decisions based upon experience, and they keep making the same mistake over and over and over and over again. So the whole idea of what he's saying here is that they don't have experience. So look what he notices. Verse 8. Passing along the street, near whose corner? Near her corner. So we know this is a young man. Okay? Because he's just walking by, just hoping he can catch a glimpse of her, I don't know the situation here, but I remember it reminded me of being in Lincoln, doing youth ministry there, and as we were getting there, the pastor said, you can sub at school. And if you do that, that'll give you an opportunity to hang out with students and get to know them. Because nobody knew me. We just moved there. And so it would give me an opportunity to do that. And he goes, I'll even consider that as part of your time that you're putting in for the church because, you're hanging out with students. I thought, oh, this is awesome. So my first class that I actually subbed for was an art class by Mr. Gene Ocheski was the art instructor. And so I took over the class for a day that he was gone, and I come in. I've never subbed before, didn't ever have any training. I just stepped in, I knew what school was all about, right? I went to school, so I should know what to do. So I'm sitting down there on take roll, and I just, okay, you have your projects. Go ahead and get working on your projects. And what was interesting is the kids that didn't know me, they listened to what I said, and the kids that knew me from church, they were the ones that, were pulling all kinds of stuff. And so, long story short, a kid comes up and he goes, I need to go call my mom. And I went, no, you don't. I tried that once. I know what you're doing, I need to go to the bathroom right now. No, you needed to go to the bathroom in between classes, And so, they started pulling all this stuff that I did. I was going, and I just had this aha moment of, I thought I was really pulling something on my teachers. And I didn't realize that they already knew what I was doing, and so I didn't have the experience. But I can tell you this, because kids, you can't get away with this anymore. I used to go to pre-algebra with Miss Seward, I think, was that right? Yeah. And so I got kind of tired of pre-algebra. I was like, it's math, So I would kind of hang out in the halls, go to the bathroom, and then when the tardy slip came out on the door, I'd just go mark my name out and go to the library. And the librarian would go, what are you doing? She sent me here because they're doing something in class and I need to come here. Okay. Now you can't do that because everything's digital, and Marcia looks up and says, not only have they missed her class, she finds out if they miss other classes. I'm like, hey, you're pretty smart because she's married to me, right? Because she knows all the stuff I pull, not because of, I've gained her education. But here's the idea. These kids pulled stuff that I thought, hey, we can get this done. There was this guy that lived on the hill as you come down to Summers. And this guy had been known to dress up in women's clothes and stand out by the highway, 62, that's really busy, and have nothing on underneath, and when people drive by, he'd flash them? It's like, one day I drove by, I'm not looking, I'm trying not to look, but he's standing at the front door of his house, which is just glass, and he has nothing on. And I quickly looked away. It's like, oh man, get out. The whole idea is that, what did students do when they got out of school? They drove by, seeing if they could catch a glimpse. This young man is going along the street near her house, taking the road to her house. All right? Now you see where this is going, right? Verse 9. In the twilight, in the evening, in the time of night, and what? Darkness. Marcia used to tell our kids all the time, nothing good happens after midnight. Okay? Nothing good happens after 10 o'clock, if you want to move it up a little bit. Nothing good typically happens, at night. In the twilight, in the evening, in the time of the night, in the darkness. Look what happens, verse 10. And behold, the woman meets him. They're just passing along the same road. Not only did he just, he was hoping to get just a glimpse at her house. We don't know what kind of stunt she's pulling at home, but the idea that she's actually walking along the same street, man, she must have been a looker, because look, she was dressed what? As. She wasn't. She was dressed just as a prostitute. She was seductive. Right? Look what happens. She was wily at heart, and she is loud and wayward, and her feet do not what? She's just not satisfied, is she? She's just seeing what she can get into. What's interesting is Solomon knows who she is. He knows the stuff about her. That means the people around know this stuff about her. Even the young man who has just happened to come by her house, happens to pass her, knows what type of reputation she has. Because it's public knowledge. Look at verse 12. And now in the street, now in the market, and at every corner she lies in wait, dressed as. Verse 13. She seizes him. She grabs him. Okay? And she kisses him. And with a bold face, she says to him, I had to offer sacrifices, and today I paid my vows. And we're going, wait a minute, what? That's not what I thought she would say, right? What is she saying here? Catholics get this. I thought Catholics had a great deal going. Because they get to go talk to this guy in a box, and if you're Catholic, I don't mean any slight here, I just want to explain something. They would go to this man in a box, and they would dump all their sins, and they would get them confessed, and then they could go, and they could go fill their sin bucket back up. Baptists, we're not any better. We just have a scripture. We just don't have to go talk to a guy about it. We can just tell God, and we believe God forgives us, and we also believe God forgets it, It's like we bring it back up, he's going, what? I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, 1 John 1:9. We just have a verse we throw out. We believe that. And so, this is what she's saying. She's saying, I've dumped my sin bucket. I've paid for all of my past sins. I'm ready to fill them back up again. Right? And so now I have come out to what? Meet you. I have come out to what? To seek you. I've been looking for you. That freaked me out one day? I'm going up the interstate in my semi-truck. And I'm going to a mill up in Missouri. And a state trooper pulls me over. And they can pull you over for anything. I wasn't speeding. I couldn't speed in that truck. And I wasn't speeding. I wasn't overweight. I really wasn't worried about it. And he walks up to the door and he asks for my license and registration, all my paperwork. And he goes, I've been looking for you. I'm like, why? And he goes, you can't run that tag here in Missouri. And I'm like, he goes, I saw you on Highway 60. We passed, and And he goes, you can't run that tag up here. And I was like, really? I didn't know, But that's not the situation here. She's seeking him. She saw him come by her house. We don't know how many times he's come by just to get a glimpse, She's noticed him. She went out to meet him, and I have what? Say this with me. I have found you. I found you. I've been looking for you. I found you. Right? Verse 16, look at this. It gets better. I have spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. I've got the best stuff. And he's like, you smell really good too. All right? I have perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes and cinnamon. It's kind of like Granny Clampett used to put vanilla right behind her ears, right? If you ever watched that TV show. I mean, the whole idea, she says, come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. Verse 19. For my husband is not home. And he was going, I was hoping you were going to say that. Right? I know, you're old enough. You've heard worse. Read your Bibles. I mean, seriously. For my husband is not at home. And he's going, yeah, I get this. This is what I was hoping you were saying. Right? And he has gone on a long, long journey. I mean, you can stay all night. Look, verse 20. He took a bag of money. He took his man purse. All right? He took a bag of money, and he's going to be gone at full moon will he come home. I mean, we're talking a whole month here. He's going to be gone a long time. You can stay for breakfast. We can have several cigarettes, all of this stuff. We've got it going. And he is going, you know what the tune on his radio is playing? Party Like a Rock Star. Or Born to be Wild. I don't know. It's one of those. And he's got it cranked up. And he's going, look at me. She found me. I mean, this has got to be awesome because look at me. And look what happened. All the adults in the room are kind of going, oh man, we know where this path is leading, right? And that's what Solomon is trying to tell his sons. Look, verse 21. With much seductive speech, she persuades him. I'm not thinking it took a lot there, okay? With her smooth talk, she compels him. Verse 22. All at once, he follows her. He makes up his mind. All right, let's go. And what happens? Solomon uses some terms here which I think is really unique. As an ox goes to what? Slaughter. He's going, oh man, I'm born to be wild. All right? I'm a rock star here. I'm not an ox going to slaughter. I'm going to live life to the full. I'm going to experience things that are going to make me a man. And all of a sudden, Solomon is going, no, you're an ox going to go. You're a stag, if that's not enough. You're a stag that is caught in a fast, in a snare that grabs its leg, and the more it pulls on it, the tighter it gets, and all of a sudden the hunters come with their spears and they spear it to death. That's what you are. He's going, no, I'm a rock star. Look at verse 23. Till an arrow pierces its liver, and as a bird rushes into a snare, he does not know that it will cost him his what? His life. You know, my dad, he taught me how to catch quail. I thought it was really cool. We like quail hunting and stuff. And he goes, let me tell you how to catch a quail. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. He goes, you build this little pyramid thing, and at the top you leave a hole. Not too big because you don't want it to fly out, but enough that lets light in. And you set it on the ground, and you firmly get it attached to the ground, so if they do try to jump up, it won't knock it over and get away. And then you dig a trench that'll fit underneath it, and then you put your feet in there, and you put your feet underneath into that little pyramid thing. And then the quail will eat that feed in, and they'll come in under it, and then they won't go back out the same hole they came in because they see light, and they'll keep flying up to it and trying to get out and realize, they'll fight it until you catch them. And then it's good eating for us. You see, this guy, he's like, my life is all of a sudden coming to something I've only dreamed about. Because I kept going by her house down her road. And now she's coming for me. This has got to be fate. She's got to be the one. She loves me more than her husband. This has got to be it. And all of a sudden, Solomon goes, no. The road you're on, her road, is like an ox to slaughter. It's like a deer being speared. It's like a bird being caught. And it will cost you your what? Life. Your hopes and dreams, your future, the road you're on, son, is not going to lead you there. That's why our society says, you can't choose to use tobacco until you're 18 years old. Why? Because you don't have the experience. When my kids started making decisions where I realized that some of these things are going to affect them, I wanted them to understand a few things. First, what's the history behind it? What's the history behind it? For example, when they come to me one time, we were on a mission trip in Iowa, and we were coming back, and we stopped somewhere around Des Moines or something, and we were talking, and she finally got up the nerve, and she goes, Dad, I need to talk to you about something. I'm like, okay. So we're talking. She goes, I want to get some snake bites. I want to get a couple piercings right here. And I was like, I was cool with hair long and colored and, all kinds of stuff. I wasn't really necessarily ready for piercings, or tattoos. I really went up for them. And it's just me. I don't like bumper stickers, it's just me. So it's nothing. I just said, here's what you need to do. I didn't say, no, you'll never get those, I said, let's think about it. Here's what I want you to think about. You've had some piercings before in your ears. We've done them several times, and you let them grow in, and you have to get it redone. You have to go through all that pain. And is that something that you seriously really want? In your lips. You want to add another one? That would be fine. You want to do gauges? I'm all right with that. Think about it. If you get piercings here and you drink milk, you could actually squirt. Wait a minute. Guys would like that. That might be a good thing. No, we better not. No. So we're sitting there thinking about, okay, history, what would it be like? Present circumstances. You're playing basketball. You can't wear those on the court. She goes, you're right. But I can get little plastic things in to replace them. They're flat. They won't get hooked. They're, da-da-da. All right, if you think. Now, let's look at your future hopes and dreams. Will these affect your job? Will these affect your work? Would people hire you because you have those? Oh, Dad, that shouldn't be a problem because a lot of people know you're just getting all this stuff. I said, all right, we're going to sleep on it. We'll send it to the sleep committee, and we'll sleep on it. And I want you to think about those things, your history, your circumstances, and your future hopes and dreams. And if this is something you really want to do, then we'll look into it. And so we did. She decided, yes, that's what she wanted to do. And I'm like, all right, we'll do it. And so she gets them. She gets little plastic things. She's playing basketball. She gets called. A guy calls me and says, hey, would your daughter be interested in working for me? I'm like, I think she would. So they talk, and she gets hired, and she shows up, and she has these. And he goes, you can't wear those. I don't want those worn at my place of business. And she's like, I can't take them out because I just got them. This is like the same week or whatever. I don't know. So she has to really get those plastic things in pretty quick. She has to go and do all this, And I'm like, one day I come in and she's got Band-Aids over them. I'm like, why are you doing that? Well, because, I'm like, see, that's all I wanted you to understand. You see, you can make decisions. You know, it's like 18 before you can smoke or use tobacco. Why? Because they don't have enough experience. And I tell them, look at your history. You know, for me, my grandfather, he used to roll his own, Prince Albert. Actually, Grandma rolled them, lit them, and handed them to Grandpa, you know. But my grandpa died of emphysema. You know, I'd sit and watch him cough up a lung, you know, and that wasn't a really pretty sight. Now, I tried smoking tried dipping when I was in 6th grade because I figured I'd spit a lot, so I had an excuse, you know. That was going to work for me till my dad found out, and then he straightened me out, and so. But what I'm saying is that I also had an uncle he died of emphysema, and my mom used to get so upset because he wouldn't quit. I mean, he's already so bad he has to carry oxygen when he finally dealt with it. So it's really, for him, you know, I told Mom, I said, Mom, what's it going to save him, a day? You know? Well, in a sense. But, I mean, he would sneak out of the back porch, you know, when my aunt wasn't looking, and he would light up and he'd catch his oxygen on fire and burn his lips right there, you know. You know, and I'm like, I was just like, it's him. You know, my Grandpa Walker, he smoked a pipe all of his life, had a great set of lungs. Doctors couldn't believe that he didn't have the lungs of a smoker, you know. You look at your history. You look at your present circumstances and your future hopes and dreams. And think about the path that you're on. The road that you're on, is it going to lead you in that direction? Is that the destination? Is that the logical conclusion of where that's going to take you? Now, I do understand that at times in our lives, things don't turn out like we'd planned. We were on the right road. We put everything together. We thought this is right. But I do want you to understand that what Solomon is saying to his sons as he looks out of the porch, he says, let me tell you a story. And I'm going to tell you where the story leads. Because that's a path that you don't want to be on. He goes on in verse 24. And now, O sons, listen to me and be attentive to the words of my mouth. Verse 25. Let not your what? Heart turn. Let not your heart turn aside to her ways. He's talking to his sons. He goes, you know what she's like. You know the type of person I'm talking about. Don't turn aside to her ways. As parents, we understand this because we have a path that we feel like our kids need to go down to become the type of person that they can be to influence people that's around them rather than them being influenced by other people. Because friends do affect the quality of your life. Your relationships affect the quality of your life. And he says to his sons, do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray, what? Into her what? Paths. And that's easily done. It's like the front of my truck. I needed to buy new tires because I was running on air. It was like, I got to get tires. So talked to the tire shop, worked out a deal, and I got 2 front ones first because I didn't want to blow out the front, so I got those 2 first because I had 4 in the back. I thought, if I blow out 1 in the back, no big deal. I can get by. So I bought 2 on the front and got them, and then I saved up, bought 2 more on the back, and then I saved up, bought 2 more on the back, and then I looked at the front tires and I went, dang, they were already wore out on the inside because the front end, and I kind of realized it, I was having to kind of hold it, and I thought, I'll just wait, and then when I get a chance. Because what happened was the tie rod end, I know that doesn't mean a whole lot to some people, but this thing that controls the tire with the steering wheel, the tie rod end fell off when Ryan was driving it. Aaron was driving, sorry. When Aaron was driving it from his friend's house, luckily he just was leaving the driveway when it fell. And he called me and he goes, hey, something's happened to the steering. And he goes, I looked at it and he goes, this rod fell out from underneath. And I go, oh, I know what that is. So I called the parts store, went and got it, and I marked it and pulled it out and put the new one in and got it all bolted up. And we did this right on the side of the road. And that was it. I didn't do anything else to it. I know some things to do to it, but I was like, I don't got time. I just put it together, thought it was right. It was out of alignment. Because if you let go of the steering wheel, it would suck you to the right. And times in our lives when we kind of just throw it together and go, oh yeah, this should work, and all of a sudden our lives are out of alignment, it's easy to stray off the path and take you in a direction that you don't want to go. So let me ask you this question. Are you on the path that you need to be on to get to the destination that you want to go? You're like, well, that's kind of vague. It's kind of broad. But see, you're struggling in an area of where you're struggling at. And in an area where you're struggling, I want you to rethink, am I on the right path to get me to that destination? My mom, one day, we were riding in the truck, and she was talking to me. She goes, can I ask you a question? I was like, sure. She goes, do you really think you need to be logging? And I go, well, to be honest with you, no, I hate logging, I just went back to it because something I know. Not that I hate it there's nothing like hearing a tree hit the ground, get to drive big equipment, things like that. But it was just the idea, do I really want to log? No, this is my passion right here. This is what I feel God's called me to do. But this was something that I needed to do in order to be able to do this. It just seemed that God pulled it together. It seemed to be the right direction. But here's what she said. She goes, are you sure you need to be logging? Because so many things are happening. Things are breaking. Things are, and I'm like, yeah, I understand why you're asking that, but let me preface it with this. In the logging industry, things break all the time. It's a rough industry. It's at the bottom of the food chain. It takes big equipment to move this stuff, and big equipment breaks because we're in rough situations. We're on hills. We're, running through the forest. You got all of this stuff that's going on. I said, things break. I said, don't you remember the struggles that Dad had? And she kind of got to thinking about that, and she's kind of like, well, yeah, she kind of forgot. Because Dad and I were always fixing everything, Had to keep it running. Baling wire and duct tape. And a weld here and there, But the whole idea is that just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're not on the right path. When Adam sinned in the garden, God didn't go, oh no, what am I going to do now? God didn't even throw up his hands and walk away and go, well, I'll just let them do their own thing. He didn't do that. He provided a path back to him because they strayed off the path. And he provided a path back to him through Jesus Christ. And he's telling his sons, let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray from her path. Verse 26. For many a what? I didn't hear you say it. Many a what? Victim. A many a victim has she laid what? She's slain them. She's knocked their feet out from underneath them. They're a mighty throng. They're littered everywhere. That's why everybody knows who she is. That's why everybody knows where she lives. Because there are a lot of people that she laid low. She destroyed their lives. We know people like this. We know men, we know women, we know children, we know people who are like this. And if you go down their path, you'll become a victim. So let me ask you this question. Are you a victim? Are you a victim? A victim doesn't mean that you're responsible. Victim means that you made a bad choice. I had a teenage girl one time, she snuck out of her house. Well, she didn't really sneak out. They made a plan. She got with her friend. They had her heard about this really cool party that was happening, and she decided, or her and her friend decided, I'll tell your parents I'm staying at your house. You tell your parents you're staying at my house, and we'll sneak off to the party. And they did. And she got abused. So bad that it literally almost destroyed her life. It took her down a path that she did not want to go down. She thought it would be exciting. I mean, through the result, the first female was incarcerated in Arkansas for a ludicrous act of this nature. It was the first female that had ever been charged. A simple decision. An easy path. Nobody will get hurt. And she still, from what last contact I've had, she still struggles in her life because of that one act. She became a victim. And it still directs her path not where it needs to go. Verse 27. Her house is the way to what? It's the way to hell. It's the way to Sheol. Going down to the chambers of what? Death. You understand, as he's talking to his sons, that path leads to death. We all have seen death of relationships, death of finances, death of businesses, death of things. You see, the direction you're on, not your intention, determines your destination. The direction that you're going, not your intention, determines your destination. And so, as we get down to this, we understand, what can a person do to get off that path? What can a person, if they stray onto the path, what can they do to get off? Think about that for a second. What can you do to get off a path or to get out of the direction that you're going? Find a new direction. Give a signal. Turn. What else can you do? Find a support group. You might need to find some people who have overcome those areas that can help you overcome. A call for help. Ask somebody to help you. You know, Solomon did write down that a wise man asks for wisdom, has many advisors before they make decisions. Sometimes we get into this idea that we have to do it alone. You know, I wanted to prove to my dad that I could be a man. You know, I can make my own decisions. I can handle this, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it work, you know, because I want to make my dad proud. But I didn't realize it hurt his feelings when I didn't ask for his wisdom. One day my dad pulled up to the processor, and I was doing firewood. I was there by myself, and it was on the farm, and he pulled up, and we were talking, and he goes, "Do you hold me responsible for this?" I was kind of like, "Responsible? What do you mean?" He goes, "For this firewood processor business that you got going, do you hold me responsible?" for letting you get it. I was like, Dad, I don't mean to be mean about this, but you didn't have a decision in this. I was going to get it whether you wanted me to get it or not. You know, I knew how my dad worked. You know, like most kids know how their parents work. When you're ready to make a decision, you know, my dad wanted to be in on the decisions that I made, and so, you know, one time I went and looked at a log truck, and he goes, "No, it's not a good one." And you know, I went and looked at something else, and he goes, "No, that's not a good one." You know, I get frustrated because every time I want to do something, no, that's not. You know, Ryan, do you ever feel like that? So the whole idea was when I worked out the deal with the processor, my father-in-law helped me out, and I got the financing, went to the bank, and the bank said, "Yeah, let's do this," you know, and it was in Pennsylvania. And so I had a big truck, and I was going to go up there and get it and bring it back and set it up and get it going. It's like, awesome deal, you know. And so my dad calls me and goes, "Hey, let's take my truck." I didn't even invite him on the trip. It was like, "Hey, let's take my truck." And I'm going, "No, I got a truck. I'll take it. It's not that big of a deal. I'm just going up there, pick it up, and come back." "No, let's take my truck. It'll be better on gas, and, you know, it's a little easier, less tires, and da-da-da-da-da." "All right, Dad, fine. Let's go." Because I knew when I would get there, he would go, "No, that's not a good deal. Let's turn around and come back." But we both get impressed by machinery pretty easily. You know, when you see big stuff, you're like, "Whoa," you know. And this thing would cut and split 4 ricks of wood in an hour. Now, we've run chainsaws all of our life, but when I saw this thing cut a 22-inch log out, you know, in just a few seconds, I went, "Oh my gosh." You know, and it split it just as fast. I mean, it would split and cut just as fast. And my dad was the same way. He was just like, you know. But I was wondering why my dad asked that question. Are you upset with me for allowing you to get it? And it made me think. Well, I struggled. It was a hard business to get off the ground. You know, it's not like you could just sell it to anybody either. I mean, it's an expensive piece of equipment. It worked great. I loved using it. And I sold firewood to all over Arkansas. I got connected with the state parks, and I was delivering to Memphis and to Hot Springs and around here, Devil's Den, and all, you know, and it's growing, it's getting there. But with anything and everything, there is a struggle to get through it. Not every trip that you go on, a road trip, is easy, is it? I mean, if you get into any one of your cars and just jump in it and drive to California, will you have trouble? Probably. Maybe minor, maybe major, I don't know. I can tell you this because I grew up doing this. When you take a church bus that has been setting for 11 months out of the year and you jump in it and go to Colorado, I mean, maybe it's gone around town just a few times, but you jump in it and you go 1,000 miles in it, you're going to find a weak spot. So I learned to carry my tools with me. The direction that you're going, not your intention, determines your destination. So if your direction and your intention are lining up to your destination, then that will help you to get where you're going. How do I know this? Well, maybe you're here this morning and you're wondering, why am I here? What's God want from me? Is there a God? We believe that God spun the world into motion, that He created it. Believe that God created you in His image. Therefore, the logical conclusion would be, if God spun the world into motion and created you in His image, then do you think that God knows the best path for you in this life? Because as we know, each and every one of us are created differently. Even though we're created in His image, we're not all the same. And we bring a different set of skills, opportunities, and also, if you think about time in history, where you are right now. So here's the deal. if you put your faith into the trailblazer, which is Jesus, who created us a path back to the Father, that will help you in your direction. We believe this because Jesus came and He lived this life just like us. Not just to save us from our sins, but He showed us a path to the Father. And He made that path viable by taking all of our sins upon Him and dying for our sins on the cross, taking them to hell and paying the death penalty. And He predicted that He would rise again. And that's why we believe, because He rose again. A man predicted His death and His resurrection, and He pulled it off. And He provided a path for us to the Father. He said it very simply. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So if you've never put your faith in Christ, you can easily do that. Romans 10:9 and 10 makes it very simple. That if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you shall be saved. It's simple. But with every path, there is also, as we know, there is also trouble. You have to deal with things. You have to work through it. They're not all easy paths. It's not always a 4-lane road with no bumps and nothing, it's hard to go through. But God, who spun the world into motion, didn't change His mind when sin entered, but yet provided a path for us back to Him, didn't give up on us. He didn't give up on you. He didn't give up on me. So I want to encourage you to take the next step. Maybe you've put your faith in Christ and you're kind of going, okay, God, what do you got here? Seek Him. Ask for directions. And He will guide you. Because this whole series is based on Psalms 119, verse 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And I want to close out with the very beginning verses on this. And I don't have them on the slide. I just want to read it to you. In Proverbs 119, I believe David wrote this. And it goes exactly along with what Solomon is writing here. He says this. Blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord. Blessed are those who keep His testimonies, who seek Him with their whole heart, who also do no wrong, but walk in His ways. You have commanded your precepts to be kept diligently. Oh, that my ways may be steadfast in keeping your statutes. Then I shall not be put to shame, having my eyes fixed on all your commandments. I will praise you with an upright heart when I learn your righteous rules. I will keep your statutes. Do not utterly forsake me. You know what's interesting? Solomon was teaching his sons, don't get pulled astray and go down her path. And David writes here, oh, that my ways may be steadfast in keeping your statutes. In other words, God, I understand that you created a path for me, and you've given me laws and rules to keep that will help me to be steadfast on that. Do not forsake me, he says. So if you've never put your faith in Christ, you can ask me or Tom or some people around you or people that brought you. They can help you with that direction. Maybe you're struggling with direction, and we can also help you with that. We can help pray. We can help, do that. We have small groups that we want to get you plugged into that can help you, because it's not just a support group. It's the idea that we're doing life together. And it's so good to be able to do that. I watch YouTube videos of other logging crews, and my wife's like, don't you get enough of that during the day? And I'm like, well, actually what I'm doing is I'm learning. Because they're videoing some stuff that I thought, well, am I doing it the way I need to be doing it? Because I'm not just doing it on my own. And so I'm learning from other people, just like you in your business, in your job, in your homes, and you want to learn from others to be able to make right decisions and do things well. So this morning, understand that direction, not intention, leads you to your destination. Trust in Him. I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And if our destination is not just the end of this life, but on into eternity, then we need to follow Jesus, who is the way. Let's pray.